All right. Happy Wednesday night. A few people watching already. We got the chat running up. What a day. Well, last couple days, really. Let a few more people filter in here. I'll ramble on a little bit before we get into the Q&A that we normally do. Lots of stuff to talk about tonight. Oh, man. Here's extra special. Just fix that up. That's better. So the SEC appealed with a couple days left. Of course they would. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and maybe this is why. I think it kind of gives XRP a moat, to be honest with you. Like, if their objective was to cause problems for XRP, which it seems like it has been, maybe not. Again, I've said for a while that I think old Gare Bear is actually on our side. If there's uncertainty in the space around what is a securities contract or offering, and it is uncertain which assets are actually securities or not securities, then whatever has clarity is going to be the thing that people use. So this actually may end up helping XRP get the adoption that people want it to. I know that that's probably counterintuitive to what a lot of people are saying or maybe thinking with the appeal on this. Ripple's business is going to continue to probably be stymied here in the U.S. This may cause them to leave the U.S., to be honest with you. If I were Ripple right now, I would... I just got the approval in Dubai to do business there full scale. I've had the approval from Ireland since November of last year. They would have approval in Japan and Singapore and Korea and Australia and Brazil and literally the rest of the world except for the US. And so if I'm Ripple, if I'm Stuart, if I'm Brad, if I'm Chris right now, the political climate here is uncertain. The regulatory environment here is uncertain. If I'm Ripple, I'm looking at potentially moving operations offshore over to Europe, where MiCA and the regulations are clear. I would not be surprised if they came out even tomorrow and said, "Hey, we're uprooting. We're tired of this. We'll continue to fight the case here, but we're going to move our headquarters and business overseas because the U.S. is stifling our innovation and our business, and it's counterproductive to continue to try to do business here in the U.S." So that's sad to see, but I think it's looking more and more likely that's likely the scenario that'll play out. But again, I think, XRP is the only thing that has clarity in the courts as not a security. The underlying asset in and of itself is not a security. Congress has not given clarity through FIT 21 or any other bills on what digital assets are. And without the SEC laying down in their fight against Ripple and letting it be, it's kind of up in the air again. What is a securities contract? Is the underlying asset of something else a security? They still waffled last Tuesday on digital asset securities. What are those? What's the actual definition? They were grilled. Gensler really, they stuck it to him. I was happy to see that. I was really proud of how Hester handled herself in that conversation. I think that she did really well. And I think a lot of people are concerned that sometimes you just get stuff right and it's cool. I said Monday that we might get an ETF, filing or listing Tuesday this week on the Monday live. And then sure enough, Bitwise comes through with the win there. That was cool. And then we got another one today that Eleanor Terrett found that's a trust that's been filed in Delaware. I don't think they've filed the S1 yet. But Canary Capital ETF for XRP. So anyway, sometimes a blind hog gets an acorn. Anyway, it was cool to see that actually came through. Weird mirror date, the ETFs for BTC were approved on 110, and then we got the filing for the XRP ETF, the first legitimate one, on 10/1. So weird coincidence there. But with that, I think a lot of people, with the SEC appealing the case today, are concerned that they won't approve these ETFs, the filings for the S1s. I don't see why they wouldn't. They cannot appeal XRP in and of itself being a security. They're already past the statute on that. There's no way that they can go back and try to appeal that now. Whatever they appealed, they specifically listed on August 7th. So that's going to be, the breach that Ripple committed, potential, or was ruled that they had committed on Section 5, that they did not register those offerings with the SEC. I think they want more money. They initially asked for $2 billion. The judge said $125 million, which is substantially less than what they asked for. All the lawyers have weighed in, as they usually do. Jeremy Hogan and Fred Russapoli. James was the one that posted it there. If you guys don't follow him on Twitter, he always keeps everybody up to date on the XRP case. Or not the XRP case, the Ripple case with the SEC. Sorry, have to be pedantic about that. But yeah, so I guess my points on this before we get into the questions, because I'm sure that there will be plenty on this subject. One, I think this is likely to push Ripple out of the U.S. I think they're tired of dealing with the SEC, and they will just take their business somewhere else. Two, that pushes their public listing, unless it's on an international stock exchange, not the New York Stock Exchange, out a good ways. Because again, the SEC would have to approve their filing of an S1 to IPO or for a direct listing to go public. That's not going to happen when they're in litigation with them. Next point would be, I think this actually creates a moat for XRP and its adoption by continuing to, go back and forth on what is a security and what's not. And XRP in and of itself having clarity while nothing else does. I think that you could see adoption at scale and maybe even a moat around that asset for whatever period of time the case continues to go on. And then lastly, I do think that the SEC will go ahead and approve the S1s that are filed. Bitwise did put theirs in today for the XRP ETF that they have here in the US. And then I think that we'll see follow-ons. Like I mentioned, Canary Capital should file their S1 fairly shortly now that they have their trust established in Delaware. I'm hoping for BlackRock. I'm hoping they use that iShares infrastructure that was filed in Delaware a while back and just prop that back up and throw their hat in the ring for an S1 also. So, and like I said, I do think that the SEC will go ahead and approve that because the ruling around the asset is that it is not a security. It's not a securities offering. It has clarity. And I think that the ETFs and, RLUSD are going to bring a lot of liquidity onto the mainnet and the XRPL and into XRP as an asset. So we should hopefully see some significant appreciation and utility of the network here in the near future. So those are my takeaways from the last 48 hours here, since you guys saw me on the last live. Anyway, we'll go ahead and hop in here. Like I said, I know that the majority of the questions are probably going to sit around what I just discussed, but we'll run it down nonetheless. I'll probably just echo a bunch of times what I've already said. Bugsy starts it off here. He says, I'm sad. You just shouldn't be sad, brother. I've been buying XRP for over 2 years. That's a while. A lot of us have been here for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Some longer than that. So we understand your frustration. Hoping XRP would bless us all and I would be able to help my family. I hope this does not take another 2 years. What's your opinion on the appeal? You know, I was thinking about this earlier today, Bugsy. So I'm 4.5 years in on owning some XRP, having an allocation to it. Really almost 3 of that have been pretty much fully consolidated into XRP. So I've missed out on a bunch of other stuff in that time frame. Should have got on the Solana bandwagon, should have got on the Doge bandwagon, shoulda, coulda, woulda, bunch of things, right? I mean, I don't anticipate it taking anywhere near another 2 years before we do see adoption at scale of XRP. I think that actually in short order here, maybe within the next couple weeks, we could see some substantial adoption and use and price appreciation of the asset. So don't get down on that. Like I said, ETFs being filed on this are big. That'll move markets. That's institutional money moving in. We saw what it did with Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin ran up to all-time high before the halving, which has never happened before in the history of Bitcoin, and that was because of institutional capital flows into the asset. Now you have a correlation with Tether there also, which I did mention. You know, RLUSD and other stablecoins being issued on the mainnet of the XRPL, on the EVM side chain, not on the mainnet. We don't have hooks native to the main yet. But stablecoins, those will drive liquidity onto the network as well. So I think those two things in tandem, you're going to see, my expectation, some price appreciation. So don't get down about the appeal. Ripple can't be the one to drive the price of XRP anyway. If they do, XRP would be a security of Ripple. So it's going to have to be somebody else that uses it to start settling things that's not Ripple. And I think maybe that could happen sooner than later. Let's see here. Atlantic Living. You had strong conviction, no appeal. I did. I really did. With price falling, does this provide a good buying opportunity? I would say that it does. On another note, are you serious about a high 3 to 4 digit XRP? It depends on adoption. It depends on utility. But by 2027, I'm pretty confident in a 5 digit XRP. I think we'll be far beyond 3 and 4 digits in 2027. I did have high conviction that they would not appeal. And the reason for that is, like I said, I just don't think that it, if you look at Attorney Jeremy's post, he lays it out pretty well. It's really just not a winning scenario for them in any case. Even if they get them to overturn it and it goes better for them this time, I don't know what additional information they could present that would change the appellate court's opinion. Judge Torres and what she had for her final ruling was very well thought out and put together well. They look horrible in this situation. They look like they're continuing to stymie innovation in crypto after they just got their butt chewed by Congress. It's just not a good look in any capacity. And so for those reasons, I felt like it was pretty compelling that they wouldn't appeal. I mean, they got a good chunk of change. Like what Congress cut their the spending or the allocation or their budget, they were going to get from the Ripple case. Like, it was going to make it up. It was a high enough number that it was way more than Ripple asked for, and it was way less than the SEC asked for. So I felt like she kind of split the baby down the middle there and gave both sides what they wanted. Yeah, I did not see this coming. Honestly, I was wrong, right? I'm not always right, and I will come on here and say when I was wrong. I thought that there was no way that they would appeal, and obviously they did. So you don't get them all. I got the ETF the day before, and then they hit me with the appeal. So 50-50. I'm 50-50. Okay. I don't have a crystal ball, just like everybody else. I take my best guess at things, and sometimes I have a little edge because I have conversations with people and I get feelings from how they talk about stuff. But at the end of the day, I still don't have a crystal ball. So I'm pretty confident on the price there, though. What I mentioned before, I think by 2027 we're going to see full scale adoption of XRP and a significantly, I think, a higher price than 3 or 4 digits. If we get the adoption. If it just gets 10% of Swift, then that's not going to be the case. But if it's back-end settlement of the stock market and derivatives and all the other things that we're hoping for, yes. Jesse says, SEC appealed the ruling. He gave you my thoughts already. Slow us down moving forward, onboarding Anchorage. No. There's no issue with anything that we have going on. XRP in and of itself, we have full support for at Anchorage. No issues on our side. They don't have an issue custodying it or providing borrow or lending or any of the other benefits that we can provide through them. And I'm glad to see you in the Mastermind, brother. Thank you for joining, and hopefully you get a lot of value there. Love the community, and I have my tea in my cup. And we do have a bunch of these. The next event, if we throw one, we'll throw one here in Dallas. And I'll, if you come, you get a free coffee mug if you're part of the Mastermind. Let's see here. The other nomad says, just woke up with the wonderful news. Gary just gave us more time to buy. Yeah. Like I said, I know people don't like Gary. I think Gary's playing his role. And like I said, on the flip side of this, I think it actually builds a moat around XRP because there's still going to be uncertainty in the space for an extended period of time. If they continue with the appeal, you're not going to get any type of, unless there's a settlement, which there could always be a settlement between Ripple and the SEC for a different value. Like, they could come to a settlement without another ruling by the appellate court. But aside from that, if it does go the distance, we're looking at late 2025 before there's a ruling that stands, right? Do we have Fit 21 passed by then? Do we have a new president or party in that's going to remove Gary and make changes at the SEC? All those things are up in the air. The adoption of XRP, I don't think, is up in the air. So you signed up for the Mastermind? Awesome. Next step is the LLC. Thank you for your support. Kudos. Thank you, brother. Excited to see you being proactive and excited to have you there in the group with us. Yeah, lots of cool things coming for that. Marvin, it's okay. He says, I don't understand the ETF hype. All it will do is allow for price manipulation, just like BTC and ETH. Now being captured, operation convinces otherwise. You're exactly right. You are exactly right that they would have full capability to manipulate price in whatever direction they wanted it to go. So if institutions need XRP to settle and they need enough liquidity in that for that to actually settle transactions at scale for them, they would easily be able to manipulate the price much higher if they wanted it to be there. So you're correct. I'm happy for that. XRP is not for retail. It's for institutions. It's for enterprises. It's for large payments and back-end settlement. Instant for negligible fees, right? And the higher the value of the token, the better it does that. So if institutions and these people that will have the ETFs like Bitwise and BlackRock and Fidelity and Canary Capital, they're going to want a high price XRP. If it's on their balance sheet and they need to offset some debts, like we had some weird stuff with Bank of America today, didn't we? Zero balances and a bunch of problems there. It's interesting. Ripple partner. I don't know what's going on with that, but interesting nonetheless. I'm exactly with you. I think that they can manipulate it. It's already very stable at like 50, 60 cents, right? Like, I'm not going to say it can't get worse from here. It could, it could, but it could also get way better. There's a lot of upside. There's a lot of air above the current price that I think it could get to with an ETF in place to be able to manipulate it that direction. So I'm going to look at it as glass half full, Marvin. Let's see here. Hola! What's going on, Alfredo? Thank you for the super chat. He says, I saw the Clinton Donnelly video. Appreciate you watching. What are your thoughts on the Safe Harbor IRS form we have to have signed before 2024 ends? Is an LLC enough? So when you move your assets into an LLC, some people aren't going to know their cost basis. You may have bought it a long time ago. You may not want to have to go through all that stuff. Basically, what Clinton was saying was that the 199 or 1099 DA, digital asset form, is basically going to provide you cost basis and make your filing of your taxes more efficient if you're holding your assets in one location. All of our clients that work with us at Anchorage, it's going to be a breeze. It'll make it super easy. They'll issue that form for us and our clients. We'll be able to figure out very quickly what the tax implications for all the transactions over the year are, capital gains and losses, what that looks like, tax loss harvesting. The wash rule doesn't apply to crypto, still doesn't. So you could sell and buy back. You got to pay the fees to do that, but you can capture losses if you have some significant gains at the end of the year and you're down. So the LLC provides, if you don't know your cost basis, something you can point to at a time when you made a transfer. Say, hey, look, this is what I'm going to use as my cost basis. This is when I put this together. Moving forward, that's what my cost basis is. So it effectively will end up being a step up in cost basis if you bought it at a lower value than that. But it's going to be pretty close. Like most people that have purchased XRP in the last 3 to 4 years probably have a cost basis pretty close to what the current value of it is or whatever they moved it into the LLC at. I mean, if it was done over the last 2 years, it'd be pretty close. It's not like it's fluctuated a ton. So anyway, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and download that form from what he has and fill that out and submit it. It is something that we are going to be looking at doing for all of our clients this year, just to make sure that we have that in place and are able to participate in the safe harbor before, you get to the other side of it and you have all these different accounts. It's going to make it a lot easier for people that consolidate into institutional custody. It's just another way to funnel people into this. I think 2 or 3 years from now, I'm not going to say nobody will have cold wallets, but I think it's going to be very rare that you find people with cold wallets in 2 or 3 years. I think people that are in digital assets, the majority of people are going to be holding their assets with an institutional custodian of some kind, because you're just going to have all the added benefits that come along with that. And you are still going to be the signer on the account, right? So you still get to decide what's done with the asset, have full visibility of it. You have insurance, you have recourse. You're not going to be losing it. You're not going to get hacked. Had a call with some gentlemen today that had a poor experience through an email, and they were looking for a way to protect their crypto and make sure that that couldn't happen again, right? So I think a lot of the bad actors in this space will be, move on to the next thing that they can scam. It's going to be difficult to scam people if you have to have, 3 or 4 signers on an account in order to move it. It won't be just like hack into the wallet and send it away like it is now if somebody gets your keys. So anyway, thank you for the question and appreciate you watching the video, Alfredo. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I like Clinton. I think he's a good guy. And I think he has good services over there. So Gail says, the fat lady missed her cue, but she'll be back to belt one out soon. Get ready. I do think that the fat lady, I don't think she missed her cue. I think she's here. I think she's already singing. Gail, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think this is going to slow down the adoption and use of XRP. It is going to slow down Ripple being listed publicly here in the US. But again, I think at this point, Ripple's probably fed up with it. And they're just going to say, you know what? We don't have to deal with it. We're going to move our operations offshore. The rest of our business is global anyway. We'll just leave the US behind. If I was them, I think that's what I would do personally. I would just be tired at this point. I've already spent, $300 million fighting the SEC and winning, and then, was going to have to pay another $125 million. And then the SEC appealed because they want more money and more skin. Like, you know what? Just y'all can have it. We're out of here. Obviously, they're still going to be involved in the case because it's on sales that happened here in the U.S. But I would just move on. So we'll see what they do. I figured the majority of the stuff was going to be an appeal conversation. Robert Ashworth, he says, it appears we're going to have to wait a little longer to get the trucks backed up. Get them while you can. Jake, I'm seeing where this appeal should not affect institutional adoption. Your thoughts? Yeah, I think we're still on track. I think XRP is positioned and poised for significant upside, adoption, utility, all the things that we're hoping for. Again, the underlying asset in and of itself is not a security. And I think the SEC will approve the S1s for the ETFs, even though they appealed the ruling against Ripple. If they wanted their buddies to be able to buy before they approve the ETFs, what a better way to do it? Let's knock the price down a few pegs. Let my buddies get in on a little bit cheaper on the DL, and then we'll let it rip with the ETF here. Let's see here. The Sosa House. Hello, Jake. Met with Connor today. Awesome. He is super knowledgeable. He's fantastic. I'm opening an account with DWP this week. I'm glad to hear it. Great to have you. Interested to know your thoughts if the SEC appeal will delay any of Japan's efforts with XRP. Absolutely not. Definitely won't. Japan has their own problems, completely separate of any regulations here in the U.S. Yoshitaka Kitao, I think he's the chairman or president of SBI. He said that Japan will adopt XRP for interbank settlement. By were his words, BY 2025. So we're in Q4 2024 here. I mean, if you were going to do it, it's time to do it, right? If not now, when? I don't I'm still watching oil. A lot of conflicts over there in the Middle East. Things seem to be escalating there. If we do have shipping lanes shut down, the strikes at the ports, also a big deal. Could cause supply chain problems and inflation on things. We have seen the yen go back to 146 per dollar, which is where it fell from pretty significantly last time. So I think tomorrow you could see, I think that's the boundary that Japan's trying to protect, is like around 146, down to 140, or up to 140, whatever way you want to look at it. As long as they can keep the yen to the dollar in that range, it keeps inflation at bay there in Japan, and it also keeps people in the reverse carry trade and doesn't unwind it. If we see it go out of either direction, I think that you're going to get some whiplash. If we saw it depreciate against the dollar beyond 146 yen per $1, you're going to see inflation start to tick up there in Japan again, and they are going to raise rates. If you see it drop below 140, which would be the consequence of that, that's when you're going to start to see some pretty big cracks and people unwinding the reverse carry trade and illiquidity and problems. So, if we do get oil, a spike in oil or commodities or other things, that could also drive Japan to raise interest rates. I think you had somebody stepped down there in Japan, or said that they were going to in the last 24 hours. The other thing that was interesting to me on the SEC deal was they had a guy there that stepped down today, just deuced out right a couple hours before they filed the appeal, right? So if, Jay Clayton, his last day at the SEC, files the case, and then now you have another guy filing right before he rolls out, from the SEC today. I don't know how much clearer you could make that I don't want to say this is orchestrated, but planned. All right. Thank you for becoming a client, by the way. Appreciate that. Look forward to working with you. ISOLAD, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says, let my people go, Gary. Like I said, this could be a net benefit for XRP. It'll be the only thing aside from Bitcoin that has legal clarity here in the US as a non-security. I think that could really build a moat around it. So I think Gary's on our side. I know people don't want to hear that, but I really do think he is. Chadwick says, since Jake doesn't often ask, let's have an epic listener. Let's be epic listeners and hit the smash like button. Thank you, brother. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I am bad about asking for that. It does help drive the algorithm here. So if you're getting value from this content, if you like it, if you wouldn't mind just clicking the thumbs up button, that does help. Subscribe, share it, get the word out. I do these every Monday and Wednesday night. I do enjoy them. People ask really good questions. And so continue to be on here as long as that's the case. Martin says I'm going to have to change the image on my photos because I look younger. The hair starting to come in a bit thicker, which is good. I need some other headshots taken, I guess. Appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words, man. Stroke the ego a little bit. It's nice. It's nice. I appreciate it. Fire Marshal Bill says, let it breathe. Right now, it's breathing to the downside. I'm hoping we get, a big vertical green candle here when they do, approve the S1s for XRP, which I think is going to come on soon. Let's see here. Adam Z says, this country's falling behind. I also think that's the narrative that they want to put out there. The U.S. is very good at playing dumb when they're really ahead, talking out of both sides of their mouth to, talk their book. I think they're a proponent of XRP in this new financial system. I say that. I think certain bodies here in the U.S. are, and I think there are a few people that significant parties that want the status quo to be maintained. And so I think you're seeing a back and forth on. Appreciate you, Kevin, on the memberships, brother. Oh, Roger, they did not ruin Swell in Miami. That'll still be a good time. Ripple always puts on fantastic events. We were able to attend last year. I'm sure that they will have, they've got a killer lineup of speakers and people that are going to be there. It's not like they don't have the money to put the event on. Now they got an extra 125 million that they're not going to have to pay the SEC. So, yeah, I'm game for it. I think that Swell is going to be awesome this year. Hopefully, we see some price appreciation. That would liven things up a little bit. Yes, Marie, that is correct. If you get stablecoin regs to pass, which Congress isn't in session anymore, like there would have to be a crisis for them to come back into, which we've seen before. We during COVID, we saw them pull emergency session and pass legislation. So I don't know what that is, or what the catalyst would be for them to come back into session and like make that happen. But if there's a liquidity crisis or treasuries get dumped, which is kind of what I think is going to happen, they could definitely pull them back in and pass that legislation, and you would see XRP used at scale because it would have clarity again through that. So, Katie girl, she says, so is the domino theory out the window for now? Absolutely not. The domino theory stands completely independent of anything to do with Ripple. Just because, and I say that because there's other parties that would use XRP to settle at scale for CBDCs, not just Ripple. And to my point earlier, I don't think it's going to be Ripple that's going to cause the price appreciation for XRP anyway. I think it's going to be other parties using it to settle. Petition. We're going to get a petition together, apparently. Bud makes a good point here. He says, "Old Gare Bear and Rosie Rios are friends. Appeals make Democrats look bad before the election. Trump puts an end to this mess." I think they're going to let it drag out. I think they're going to drag it on out because, again, I think it puts a moat around XRP. Let's see here. Maine says 7+ years. You're not alone. I have a few other people that I know that have been here that long, and it's been a long, winding road, and I'm sure you're ready to have some type of green candle at the end of it. I don't think you're too far from it. Let's see here. Here we go. David J. Huge dump today, not just for XRP. Do you see a bull run in October? I do. And if so, do you see XRP going up with it? I do. And without institutional adoption, what price do you expect it to run to? I don't know why it wouldn't get institutional adoption. It still has clarity and could be used. But if it's just speculation, you could see. What did we see in 21? It went up to like almost $2. I think that's realistic. You could see a couple dollar bump from here. I don't think it would get back to all-time high. The supply that exists now on the open market is greater than it was last time. Retail speculation drove it to $3.84. I think that it will. I think you could see $2 plus if it was just retail speculation on something. Now, but we have ETFs that have been filed, right? And we've got an S1 that's been filed. So I think you're going to see some institutional capital move in on top of it. And I think that is going to drive the price. You saw Grayscale give an inkling to that with their trust. The gentleman I talked to earlier today were a referral from Grayscale that they had a conversation with. So I think they know. I think BlackRock knows. I think people are ready and have put things in place to be able to funnel liquidity into XRP and drive institutional adoption of it. I will say this, which was interesting. Max Avery put out a video earlier today that I thought deserves some attention. I don't know how many people saw it. It was about Hedera, an ETF for Hedera, by the same one that had done the XRP ETF, filing Canary Capital. They did one for HBAR. So not the only one. You got some other people that put out stuff for Sol. There was a lot of speculation on what would be filed first. Obviously, XRP won that race for the S1, but yeah, it's cool. I think that you're going to see a lot of these specific networks that a lot of people anticipate having high values get some structured products built for the average person to be able to invest in, which I think is really good for the overall adoption and liquidity in the crypto market. This is a good question by Aaron. He says, can I add my crypto assets to my living trust, or is there a different trust for crypto? You can put them in your living trust, Aaron. I don't know if you have a revocable or irrevocable living trust. In most circumstances, what you're going to put in a living trust is going to be items that you are going to use that aren't going to appreciate substantially, that you want to protect from creditors and probate, want to pass on to your beneficiaries without a public record of those assets. Most assets that you want to protect that are going to appreciate or produce cash flows, you're going to want to put in an asset protection trust or a different type of contract versus a living trust. You're just going to get greater protections with that than you would with a living trust. Most of the time for a living trust, you're still the trustee. And those are a bit easier to pierce if there is lawsuit or litigation or a creditor than an asset protection trust. It takes a little longer to season an asset protection trust, somewhere around 2 years. But once you have set that up and your assets are in there and you've waited that period, I don't want to say it's ironclad. There have been instances where it has been pierced, but if we're working with us, we've buttoned it up in a way that it makes it very difficult. Just as an example, let's say somebody you rear end somebody and they find out you have money. They're going to get their lawyer to do a background check. Maybe they find the trust, right? Their lawyer is going to tell them, we probably don't want to do this. It's going to take you 2 or 3 years just to go through all the proceedings that would be required to try to penetrate this trust and come after these assets. You're going to spend millions of dollars to do that, and it's likely that you're still not going to get anything. So that's the benefit of an asset protection trust. We choose Wyoming. You could do it in Delaware. You could do it in South Dakota. Nevada is another good jurisdiction or state. We choose Wyoming most often just because it has the best laws around digital assets in particular. And that's, along with no state tax and the attorney-client privilege that you get there, just makes the most sense. So that's what we help our clients file and normally see is an asset protection trust in Wyoming, not digital assets in their living trust. Not to say that you can't, but I don't know that it's best practice. Let's see here. XRP Liquidity says there is more going on behind the scenes. We only see what they want us to see. Don't worry, or just get out. If you can't handle it, you don't deserve it. On the other side of it, It's been a long road. I know that there's some people that have just bought in here just recently, and they're probably going to catch a good wave and make a lot of money in a short period. I'm thankful for the amount of time that it's taken. Been able to, accumulate more and make sure that other things were taken care of and situated. So I think that, a lot of people are going to be better off because it has taken longer. I think a lot of people have gotten in and got an allocation that wouldn't have previous. So anyway, yeah. If you're not here for it, if you're not here for the skills, traits, and beliefs that this has allowed people to acquire, then I'm with you. It's probably not for you. Let's see here. Interesting names on the YouTube channels. Lizard King. Couldn't the judge toss the appeal on standing or other technicalities? No. So they didn't put it back to the judge. They put it up to an appellate court. So it's a secondary court. The judge that ruled on the case cannot just throw it out. It's not done. It wasn't filed that way. So the SEC could remove it, or there could be a settlement between Ripple and the SEC, completely separate of any ruling by the judge. But again, I think that there may be an ulterior motive here to continue to cause confusion around what is a security in crypto and actually build out a moat for XRP. Not Ripple. Ripple will be able to operate internationally, not here in the US. But yeah, I think XRP, the digital asset, actually ends up benefiting from this deal. She cannot reject it. She's not involved. It goes to the appellate court. David says, why does the price reflect the slimiest bit of bad news, no matter how much good news presents itself? Yeah, I don't know. It sure does though, right? Like we get a run up and then price protection theory. I don't know. I think they need to keep it in this band for the liquidity for ODL or whatever they're using it for right now. Yeah, I'm not. Again, if you wanted to buy more, you got a little bit more. I know everybody's ready for it to go, and I think you're still going to get that. But if you wanted one last little bite at it, I think that's what this is. I think if they know they're going to launch the ETFs and they know that they're going to pour liquidity into this thing and they wanted their buddies to get in on the cheap one last time, this is a hell of a way to do it. So on that note, Robert, hopefully that gives you something to smile about. I know a lot of people are, look, probably one of the other things that this investment in particular has taught me is that you can't be emotional about stuff. You have to have high conviction on, what you're doing. If you have a bias and you've thought through your thesis on why something's going to happen, you have to continue to see it through, even when there are trials or problems. Imagine being Michael Burry in 2008. Okay, managing billions of dollars for his investors in his fund and betting against the housing market when everybody told him he was crazy. Everybody was like, why are you doing this? And obviously it took longer to happen than he thought it was going to. Years, in fact. He started going to the banks a long time before everything actually transpired and problems happened. And he basically built a way to bet against the housing market that didn't exist before. And the banks were like, well, yeah, we'll take the other side of that. And he had to pay premiums to keep those options open. And he started burning through capital at a pretty significant rate. I think at one point he was down to like, this is going to sound silly, but like, I think he started with 2 billion or 3 billion, and he was down to like 200 or 300 million. And that's when things actually happened. And then he ended up with like 400 billion in the fund because of the bets he took. So all at once, he was very right. And then people were mad at him for being right. Because it caused not a depression, but a very hard time in economic history here in the U.S. So I don't know. I kind of think that people that have been here, that have fought through this and have conviction on their thesis, and that this is going to be good. You've built that skill set. You are like Michael Burry in that there's been tons of people that have come against the XRP community and said, you're wrong, you're stupid, that's not going to happen, on and on and on. There's still people, like there was a lot of people happy today that the appeal happened, right? I don't know why people get off on other people's misfortune. I'm too busy personally to talk down to other people. I'd rather create value than try to steal people's happiness. But there's people like that out there. So don't let those people get you down. They've been there the whole time. Just if you believe, then hold out, and it will happen for us. Let's see here. Again, continuing with the appeal conversation. 1970 Hodl says, do you think the appeal may slow down the mass adoption? No. That we are looking for, not for the asset. For Ripple, yeah, but not for the asset. Let's see here. Some people are getting it here in the comments. Callie, awesome. Signed up for the Mastermind. It sucks for the Ripple appeal. It sucks for Ripple. You know what? I'll tell you who it really sucks for on this. And I met Bob Way in Vegas 2 years ago. Bob's had a hard time the last couple years. He was off Twitter for a period of time. And really his whole retirement hinges on Ripple going public and him getting liquidity against his equity that he has in the company. He's been there, I think he was like the 10th employee at Ripple, and that's 2012. We're almost 13 years later here, and he still really hasn't had a liquidity event for his equity that he has in the company. And that's his retirement. That's Bob's retirement. So if the appeal sucks for anybody, Bob Way, praying for you, brother. I hate this for you. They say they're going to continue to DCA, and hopefully when Trump wins, he fires Gary. I think Hester's going to do the right thing. I think that the SEC is going to approve the S1s. And I think the asset in and of itself is going to be used at scale and adopted. I just think Ripple's going to be stymied here in the U.S. And like I said, they may just wrap it up and take it offshore. It's kind of what I'm thinking at this point. Oh, no, you took the bet. Crappy snails. The names. I lost $50. I had a bet with a mate that the SEC would do a Hinman and drop the appeal on October 7th. Oh, you thought that they would wait till the last day to do it. That wouldn't have surprised me. I say that. I really thought that they were like, nope, not going to appeal it. Just let it ride. Everything was going to be good. But I was wrong. I was wrong on that. High conviction, but unfortunately they went ahead and appealed. Chad says, do you think in the long run this will be good for crypto due to loss after loss? So the SEC continues to lose. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to continue to have problems. like I said, I think this is a lose-lose scenario for on why that I don't know why they would do that, but they did, but it'll be all right. I think that they will lose again, and it'll just reflect poorly on Gary and the Dems and everything else. So, unfortunate, but it is what it is. Bob was ill. So Melanie, you may know what was going on, and it's not his fault. It's unfortunate, though. I feel bad for him. I'm hoping that they do get some liquidity for Bob. Let's see here. Did I get to the bottom of the chat this early in the night? Oh, we're about an hour in. Okay, well, let's see here. This one's good. Andy says, do you really think that the BRICS didn't put nations, but I'm going to put nations, and the other countries that are going to utilize XRP even care about the SEC? No. I think they're ready to rock here, and I think that it, that there's still got to be a catalyst. I don't know what that's going to be. You've been talking about the domino theory since March of this year. They are all ready to detach from the US dollar, like you stated here. And the SEC is a regulatory body here in the US, right, for US securities. So, yeah, I think the rest of the world is ready to move away from the dollar as the global reserve currency and being beholden to the US and, what we want to do. I've had a wonderful privilege my whole life of living here in the U.S. and living high on the hog and having all the benefits of the dollar being a global reserve currency. I know that has not been the case for other countries. It's been a significant disadvantage. And so I feel bad about that. Even though I've enjoyed that privilege, I do think that it would be better if other countries had an opportunity to compete fairly. And so look forward to that here in the near future. And I think that's what BRICS nations want. I think that's what XRP and a decentralized network provide. And so, I think that's going to be adopted much, much sooner than some people anticipate. Even though everybody, I remember telling my dad that we were going to move away from the US dollar before he passed away. It's been almost 3 years ago now. This is probably 2019, 2020. And he was like, I've been hearing that my whole life. That's not ever going to happen. Well, and now almost anybody you talk to is like, yeah, dollar's on its way out. We can see the writing on the wall, even here in the US. So what's the next thing, right? That's what people are looking for. Jeffrey says that the hair is looking luscious. Thank you again for that. You should grow a mullet and push the limits. Jeffrey, my son wants a mullet. I cannot stand a mullet. And I say that there was a little boy that I seen when I was dropping my son off today. And he had a pretty good mullet. It was a really good mullet. Not my thing. It's not my style. I can't do I had long hair in high school, and I've tried it. Not my thing. But thank you for the kind words. I'm glad that the hair is growing in and you guys are noticing it. It puts a smile on my face. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Vincent, you're probably not alone in asking this question, but I'll go ahead and address it just for clarity on this. So Ripple is a company. It is not XRP. They're two very different things. XRP is a token that moves value on the XRPL, which is a decentralized network that is not controlled by any centralized party. Ripple is a company that uses that technology to settle transactions and provides services to banks and enterprises. And they create products that use that technology. So Ripple leaving the US would have zero impact on XRP being listed on exchanges here in the US or being used by institutions or enterprises. It has clarity from the case here, and so there would be no ramifications if Ripple were to leave the US. It's not like, again, there's not zero correlation between XRP and Ripple, but XRP is a tool that Ripple uses. It's not a representation of their equity or any interest in the company. And on that, like I posted earlier, so Brad sent out, Garlinghouse sent out an email to all the shareholders on Ripple's cap table earlier today, just addressing, the appeal and what that process was going to look like, which I did share in the Mastermind. We have done previous deals, which I can discuss, where we put capital together and, purchased Ripple equity. And so we get all those emails. I feel that it's appropriate to share that with our community, those communications, because they were the people that put the money together along with us and purchased that equity. So, and then I had somebody comment, because I mentioned stockholders in the tweet, and he was like, stockholders are for securities. And I'm like, yep. Equity interest in Ripple is a security. It's a private investment. So anyway, I think you're not alone misconstruing the digital asset and the equity of the company. But I want to make sure that I'm specific about that and make the delineation between the two, just so that other people, if they are listening and think through that, maybe they're here for the first time, they know that there is a difference. Hey, very cool. Mark Hayes says, good day, Jake. Is that how you spell good day? From Queensland in Australia. Very cool. What's your anticipation for the macro scene following the setting of SOFR LIBOR that was on October 1st, as well as capital requirements for banks under Basel III regs? Pretty significant. You can't manipulate the interest rates anymore. So I think Basel III, they're going to have to be required to audit those reserves and know that there's a backing. They won't be able to manipulate that. COMEX, got to get that right. Tomorrow is actually the day where SOFR and LIBOR switch completely. It was technically October 1st, but they gave them a window. So contracts for the next 48 hours could roll. Tomorrow is when that actually is a hard, this is when it stops and transfers over. So looking for some liquidity problems on the back end of this week. Thursday and Friday, I think you're going to see potentially large issues for banks getting liquidity. I think the Fed's website was down yesterday, mysteriously, when they showed the reverse repo jumped up to 2 billion on Tuesday or Wednesday night. It's Wednesday night now, so it had to have been Tuesday night. Everybody's broke at this point, and interest rates still haven't come down enough to be able to save the day on that. The Fed always historically has pivoted too late. And the last two times that they held interest rates at these levels for a year were in the 1920s, right before the Depression, and then again in 08. So, was it 08? Might have been 2000. Anyway, forgive me. Go watch Game of Trades. He was the one that was talking about it on YouTube. Anyway, the two large financial crashes They held the interest rates around 5 or 6% for a year, and then pivoted. And by the time they pivoted, it was already too late. People were illiquid. So I think that's going to be the implication. I think we're going to have a credit crisis and a credit freeze in broader markets is going to be the implication for both the things you just mentioned there, along with high interest rates. This is an interesting theory. Nothing is going to happen with price until the whole thing comes down, markets, banks, etc. Once that happens, we're on. I don't know about that. It's possible. Like I said, we need a catalyst. I don't think all markets will be crashing. I think you'll see a rotation from large cap stocks into the broader stock market, the Russell 2000. I think you'll see breadth open up. Potentially a large pivot in interest rates here in the U.S. that causes a big move and rotation in things. I think you could see there's definitely a potential for a black, Ice 9 type event. And if that's the case, then they won't really go down. Everything will just lock up. You won't be able to move stuff. You won't be able to get any liquidity. Which, if you count that as down, then fair enough. Brad Garlinghouse and Stuart do not believe that he is on our side. They are unusually. Then you are unusually positive, Jake. Brad and Stuart and Chris do not like the SEC. I've heard Brad speak in person on multiple occasions about how strongly he dislikes Gary Gensler and the SEC. They don't need, I don't know how to explain this. Not all parties at the table are privy to the game or the rules a lot of the time. There could be other parties or people that are pulling strings that Brad and Chris and Ripple aren't even affiliated with or know about, right? I think people make an assumption that everybody has all the details and context all the time, when in reality, that's usually far from the case. Most of the time, the people that are involved in something have a piece of the story, but not all of it. And so, you could feel like you've been wronged by somebody else. And that's how they want you to feel, so that you'll fight a certain way and do certain things, right? If you're the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, you might want certain reactions from people. It's problem, reaction, solution. And so, anyway, I'm not saying that is or isn't the case. Just wanted to point that out. Let's see here. Gare Bear. Lots of funny comments here in the chat. We'll go back down to the bottom. Yes, Bank of America their app was, you could open it, but your balances, you couldn't see them for a period of time, which was interesting. Don't know what that does or doesn't mean, but, banks have problems all the time. Apps have problems all the time. We work on software. We know how that goes. CJ says, "You're the best." Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. How long will this next bull run last? And can you give us an insight on the new Texas Stock Exchange and XRP backing it? It'd be great if that was the case. I don't know if it will or won't be. I know BlackRock and Citadel are backing it. So if that constitutes XRP, then sure. I don't have any immediate information on that. It's supposed to go live here at the end of Q4, early Q1. we'll continue to keep our ear to the ground here in Dallas and let you guys know if I do hear anything on that. You guys will be the first ones to know for sure. I will say, Ricky Bobby, if you ain't first, you're last. No mullet. Anticipate stable. This was a good one. Rebecca's asked, "Do you anticipate stablecoin regulations coming in before the elections?" It's going to require a catalyst. You're going to have a situation where treasuries are being dumped onto the open market by international parties. Japan has the largest position in U.S. treasuries. If they became a net seller and de-risked from the dollar, I think that you would have a follow-on effect from all the other BRICS nations. And at that point, it would be basically the U.S. would have to stabilize the debt market, and I think the way that they will do that is through stablecoin regs. They'd have to pull Congress back into session and pass that very quickly in order for people to issue stablecoins and soak up all those treasuries to back them. So that's my thesis. That's what I've kind of been talking about since March of this year with the domino theory and what I see lined up. That also gives them a way to sanction Tether very easily. They wouldn't be compliant with U.S. regs, and they would be using a U.S. dollar denominated stablecoin. So that's another reason that I think that they probably will get passed by the end of the year. I think that we're going to see a rotation or transition out of Bitcoin into the rest of the market. If you're looking at that chart, and you're looking at Bitcoin dominance, it looks like it's on the edge of falling off significantly. I've said this publicly lots of times, but I'll reiterate it again. I do think that 75,000 is or was the top for Bitcoin. Anytime in the past when it has touched the 50-day moving average or broken through it to the downside, bull run's been over. It's moving into a bear market. We've already seen that touch happen. So no matter what, this time is either the same. If it's the same as before, then we're in a bear market for Bitcoin already. If this time is different, then it really is different. So, for a lot of the people that I know, we do have clients that hold significant allocations to Bitcoin. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it goes to the moon. I hope it goes to 100,000, 200,000, 400,000. A lot of these price projections that people have forecasted, I don't see that happening this cycle. Maybe it happens in the future. Again, my bias is take it with a grain of salt. I don't have a crystal ball, like I mentioned before. So, but I do see stablecoin regs coming in. Ideally, you said before the elections. I don't know on that one. Congress is out until November. So, or after the election is when they come back into session. So maybe it takes till then. But if we have a crisis, I could see a circumstance when it would. Let's see here. Fake scare tactics by the SEC will blow up in their faces. Just hold strong. We got this. I would agree. MC prosperity. I've said this before, and I've been over it a couple times here lately, but I just want to reiterate it again. The Mastermind, we're going to lock that down for 30 days on the other side of price appreciation for XRP. I really don't think that's too far from now. I do think we're getting institutional adoption, and you're going to see significant price appreciation when that happens. The ETFs are a big sign for me. Like I said, having these filings, an actual S1 being filed and reviewed by the SEC today is a big deal. And I think that institutional capital is going to move in very quickly. And like I said, if you wanted to manipulate the price down one last time, let your buddies get in, talk your book a little bit, and prime it before it goes. this is the way that you do it. But again, on the other side of price appreciation, we're going to lock down the mastermind. If that's something that you're interested in, if you do want to be a part of that community, you can join over there. You just go to mastermind.beyondbroke.com. You can put in, Beyond Broke, all capitals, the number one, MO, capitalized, and that gets you a free month. And you're locked in at the pricing that it is now. On the other side of price appreciation and that 30-day period, we're going to 10x all the prices there. So very protective of that community and the people that are there. I think I said this Monday, but I'll just mention it again. When you come into the community, I do not DM you. I'm not going to reach out to you. If you DM me, I will respond. I answer my DMs every single day in Discord for Mastermind members. If you have questions or concerns or anything, constructive criticism, always looking to provide as much value as we can there. I do interact with the members almost daily in the chat, and then also, like I said, through DMs. But I will not be reaching out to you. If you hear something about Bitrelix or something like that, that's not me. Please do not send assets anywhere. The only people that you would work with for custody for Digital Wealth Partners, you would talk to Connor or Fred or Jonathan. Our group there would have a conversation with you, and you'd get a follow-up email. It will not ever be through Discord. So we've just had some people mention to me that that's been going on, that there's some imposters there in Discord that have been pretending to be me. And as people come into the community, they've gotten initial messages. So just want to, make that loud and clear. It's not me. And want to make sure that people are protected. That's my main concern. So again, if you do want to try to get in the community, try it out for 30 days, risk-free, basically, with that code that I mentioned. So would love to see you guys there. Like I said, super excited about the culture. And we do run private investments there. Like I said, we got an email from Ripple today because we are on their cap table, and we do have openings in private investments currently that people can make allocations to if that's something that you're interested in. Matty G, what's going on? He says, Jake, my XRP brother, what's going on? What's your average daily routine look like? I'm trying to find the time to work out and walk 10,000 steps per day. I find it difficult. Need your inspiration. Oh, man. I definitely don't get 10,000 steps like I used to. I need to get a walking desk. I think that's probably one of my next purchases post-moon is just a treadmill that goes underneath your desk so that I can get more steps in and move. I find myself sitting a large portion of the day now where I didn't used to. Get to the gym. You got to find whatever routine or time works best for you. I have horrible workouts if I haven't had at least 2 meals in me before I go train. They don't have to have carbs in them. I just need some food in my stomach before I go lift weights or train in whatever capacity. If that's swimming, if it's playing basketball, if it's whatever physical activity, I need some fuel for that. So that's just me, though. Some people work out great on an empty stomach. And I think whatever time you can find, and then whatever way you can incentivize yourself to move more is what I'd recommend, brother. We do have a whole channel associated with that in the Mastermind. Talk about all those things there. And was a bodybuilder for a decade, so just best practices are over there in that channel. Diet tips, training tips, a lot of that stuff. Supplementation as well. Let's see here. This one's interesting. David J says, imagine how many peeps said F this and bailed out, losing all their XRP hope. Mission accomplished by the SEC. And of course their buddies, cheap XRP at the same time. I think this could be one of those last time shakeouts, like I said before. We'll see if that's true or not. I know a lot of people want to continue to dollar cost average, so Hopefully not for those folks, but for a lot of people, I know that they want it to go ahead and move. So, yeah, I think to your point, the SEC may have accomplished both two separate objectives. They're not here to help retail. That's very apparent at this point. Sammy, GG bruh, is their name. Can someone explain how BTC has legal clarity? I don't recall any court proceedings that have given it in the past. I believe it was the commodities, the CFTC, that gave it the designation that it is a commodity. And that's how they've treated it up to this point. It is taxed as an asset here in the U.S. And I'm with you. I don't think that there's definitely not any court proceedings or judgments or anything like that that have been passed down that gives Bitcoin legal clarity. But, the SEC said that it wasn't security, and the CFTC said it was a commodity, and that's who's governed it up to this point. So I think that's why people just assume that it has clarity. And Brad Garlinghouse has stated that also, so that's why I kind of echo that. If Brad's saying that, then he has a premise behind it, where he doesn't mention ETH having clarity. So there had to have been something else aside from just the SEC and him in speech that he's referring to when he says that. Let's see here. Randy says a standing desk plus treadmill's best thing I've ever done. So much more alert and productive. I'm sold, Randy. Send me what one I should get. If you think there's one that's better than other ones, just email it to me. It's going to be info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and I'll see it. I'll look for it. And next time you guys see me, maybe I'll be walking along on video. Matty G says, check out that channeling. Another question: if Ripple does list outside the U.S., does that change anything for the private equity holders in the U.S.? There's some type of, like, I forget the name of it, but it's like a certification or qualification that allows a broker to hold international interest or securities. So whatever stock exchange they listed on, I would assume the majority, your broker that you used would have to have an affiliation or a capability to hold international securities interest or trade stocks on the London Stock Exchange or wherever they listed. And we would figure that out for our members that do hold equity on the cap tables that we have. But not a whole lot different. You'd still be able to hold it there. Yeah, you could still do it inside your IRA. Like, I don't see an issue with it. So, might impact price and liquidity a little bit. The New York Stock Exchange is the most liquid stock exchange on the planet. Price that it would IPO at could be slightly lower just because of less exposure to investors. So, guess is as good as mine on what that ends up being. I still think it would be pretty significant IPO or public listing price. Dalen says, I think this means we are pretty close. Timelines for the financial system are set, and we just need to go through the motions. I'm kind of with you, brother. I don't think it's too far here off in the future. So, Sammy says XRP is still not a security. Laugh out loud. I don't know why people are freaking out. I don't know either, Sammy. Like I said, I think that the SEC will go ahead and approve the S1s as they are filed Bitwise first. And I think that, like I said, BlackRock, I think, is a sleeper. I think that they have the infrastructure ready to go for it, and they'll likely spin it back up. Maybe I'm wrong. Could be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball. But that's my thesis. One day we will all be rewarded for the bad behavior of the SEC, the XRP army forever. Yeah, Jared, I like I said, I think this is kind of a blessing in disguise. So, It is getting pretty close to about an hour and a half here, and I try to keep these digestible for people that listen back to them later on. So probably hang out for another 5 minutes, maybe a few more questions, and we will then wrap it up for the evening. David says, how does the fact that FinCEN said back in 2017, I believe, that XRP was a convertible digital asset? It was FinCEN in 2014 is when I think they actually fined Ripple, and they said it was a currency back then. So I think it's had that designation for a long time based on that. But the SEC obviously didn't take that into consideration. Mr. Nobody says the appeal freaked me out, made me bump the buy button. Hate when that happens. J Tank says, Jake, what do you think Russia will announce at BRICS meeting on October 22nd? I think at that point there's potentially that they will be moving away from the US dollar. I mean, they already have, right? We had sanctions, and so they've been outside of the SWIFT system for a pretty good period at this point, and they operate on chips with China and the other BRICS nations. So, maybe whatever currency they're going to be using to transmit at scale, digital asset that they're going to use to be able to, provide liquidity in their swim lanes and transfer between international payments. They've been saying that for a while. They've already given that the green light. So I think maybe that's what they'll be announcing. Lake Hay says, hey, Jake, how does RLUSD get regulatory clarity? Is the SEC? It'd be the OCC would be the regulator for that because it's a currency. And it's a stablecoin represented by, or USD stablecoin. So the OCC would be the regulator there. Yeah, nothing to do with the SEC because that is not a security. Brad Kimes going to the Supreme Court. It's possible. Again, I didn't think they would even appeal. And they did that. So I'm going to throw my hands up here. Your guess is as good as mine. Obviously, rational decisions aren't something that they make. So it's going to be difficult for me to predict anything. So let's say, maybe Brad's right. Maybe it heads that far. If it does, it's going to be a long time. It's going to be a long road. It's already been one. And it's going to be even longer. Shawnee Montana says, do you think XRP wasn't going to be so powerful? The SEC wouldn't be fighting this hard, especially possibly making this into Second Circuit case law. I don't think that it's going to be Ripple that causes price appreciation for XRP, but price appreciation would definitely help their business. All right. I think that's where I'm going to end it tonight. As always, appreciate you guys being on here and asking great questions. We'll be back next Monday night, and for another Q&A. If you want to reach out to the family office and have a discussion about how to set up an LLC or get estate planning, you just go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. You can meet with me or another person on our team. If you want custody and wealth management and be able to borrow against your assets and earn interest on your XRP or other assets that you hold, digitalwealthpartners.net is that website. And then lastly, like I mentioned before, Mastermind, if you want to be part of that community, it's probably the cheapest option of anything. And it's actually free. If you use the code Beyond Broke, all capitals, 1, the number 1, MO like month, also capitalized. You put that in there and get a free month of Social or Carbon One. So as always, like I said, appreciate you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see y'all on the next one.